Hi everyone, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. Before we bring on tonight's guest, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, please go to bigfooteyewitness.com and submit a report. All right, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Matt. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vic. How are you, sir?
I've been better. I'm just getting over something, and from what you told me, sounds like you're just starting to get something, so don't we make a pair?
Yes, sir. Actually, I'm glad I took a little bit of medicine a little bit ago, and it seems to have started to clear me up, so we're good to go.
Well, that's good news then. Matt, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay. I am from Youngstown, Ohio, which is an hour from either Cleveland, Ohio, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are directly in the middle of both of those. I am 46 years old. My wife, Stacy, and I have a daughter, Amira, who is 13 as of December 22nd. We have two dogs, Beamer and Raven, who will come into play for part of this story or experience. I went to Youngstown State University. Before that, I went to a private school in Youngstown, and we adopted my daughter from Guatemala, and it took us 4.5 years and 19 trips to get her home, but she's home. And we are a very happy family. We just got back from a 3-week vacation in Florida that we do every single year, and our trip down to Florida will actually also come into play for part of my experience a little bit later. So that's basically, just a little quick rundown of who I am.
Yeah, unfortunately, that trip to Florida will come into play here. You had reservations about whether you should talk about your encounters tonight or not. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, we had, while we were down in Florida, I had, a couple experiences over a 4-day period that kind of cropped up since we have a friend of ours that lives down in Florida, and we went out to dinner with him this one evening, and we got on the subject of, he said he doesn't get into actually killing animals. He is into target shooting, which I am as well. I don't hunt. I never have hunted. He said he occasionally goes deer hunting, but he said this day he was just shooting targets. But on this day, he said that he truly believed that he was in the presence of a skunk ape, which anybody that is not really aware of that, it is, one of the southern Bigfoot, which are supposedly not as big as the Northwest version or the maybe even the Grassman, who I've heard different stories that Grassman is bigger like the Northwestern one, or maybe even a little smaller. But one of the other stories I've heard about the Florida Bigfoots or the skunk ape is that they are more aggressive. And he said that he thinks he was in the presence of one. He had knocking. He had the smell, which so many people have, said that it is something they noticed when they see Bigfoot or whatnot, that the horrible smell and the wet dog slash egg, carrion type of smell. And he had said he even saw some strange footprints. And, again, those who don't know too much about the skunk ape, apparently there is a different kind of footprint, which I've heard some rumors that they're three-toed, that some people, I guess, think that there might be inbreeding going on, which could cause, abnormal mutations, not much unlike, human beings. If they're inbreeding, you get, some genetically damaged cells going on there, which causes, different afflictions or, anatomical changes to them. Long story short, again, he was out shooting. He thought he saw the tail end of one. He said he saw a big shadow, but he never ever once said he saw it physically. He never saw, its face or its body, really, just kind of like a glancing out of the corner of his eye shadow. And once he told me about that, I actually went into sharing with him that my experience years ago, which we're going to be getting into here, when I was a child, that is connected with a Dogman. I started talking to him about it, but then my wife kind of gave me a quick look as, saying, hey, your daughter's sitting here and she's only 13 and she would be extremely nervous if she heard the story, which I told him what had occurred over a 4-day period, or I'm sorry, that what happened after this evening. We had some things happen over a 4-day period. So I went to the bar with him and I went into telling him the story that occurred with me and my friends when I was a little kid, when I was 15 years old. And after I told the story, I had some strange events happening to me at the condo we stay at. In terms of, there was some type of animal that was hanging around the patio area, the upper patio area, which is a floor up off the ground, down in Florida, because of flooding that can occur during hurricanes or other situations. They will, especially in the beach area, which we were at, they will put structures up, like I just said, higher, so that that first floor of said building does not immediately get flooded. So what was going on was my dogs started acting strange. When I say strange, they normally, liked to walk through the sliding glass doors. They open, they're really cool. They open real wide. There are 3 doors that go together and they push all the way into the wall, which basically takes a big, huge wall and hides it away in the structure, so that you have this, basically your extra room out on your balcony. And they like to, when I open those doors up, they 9 out of 10 times will go out there. They'll sometimes lay out there and stare out at the water from up there. And what I started noticing was they were not going out there. In fact, not only that, they were going in the bedroom and they were not coming back out until I closed the sliding glass doors, which was so strange. But then what also had occurred was I had heard some strange noises. And when I say strange noises, we have right directly across the street is the beach where we go is it's called Indian Shores, and then there's Indian Rocks and the St. Pete Tampa area of Florida. And that the beach is right across the street. Well, what is outside of our balcony is the intercoastal, and we have right underneath where our balcony is our mangrove trees, a huge mangrove. And it will, as the night goes on, it will the tide comes in and the mangroves fill up with water. Well, what I started hearing walking through the water, and I went out a few times before I started to see things. I saw when I first saw something, I had seen basically you saw the water, and right under the balcony was just a small strip of grass that went the entire length of the condo facility, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 yards long, but width, it was maybe only 10 feet wide. And this, like I said, went the whole length of the building. Well, after you go, the farthest point in the width, the water starts when it comes in, and those mangrove trees are there. Well, I noticed right underneath where the balcony is, the water was disturbed in terms of there was, there's a lot of mud underneath that water when the water comes in from the tide, and the silt and stuff was all disturbed. But that wasn't the strange thing. The strange thing was you could tell where there were footprints going through this, and it was not long after I went out on the balcony and I had heard that sloshing, like somebody walking through there. When I got out there, I saw basically footprint size, strides with the footprints going through the mangroves into where I couldn't see where they went anymore. And the water, like I said, it was disturbed with the silt being pulled up. I would go back in, and then I would kind of hear some walking again. And finally, at one point, I went out there, and I actually, just out of the corner of my eye, caught eye shine. And this was eye shine that was not right, because we have, down in Florida, you have a lot of alligators. There are deer that actually go through the area that we're in. They don't usually ever go into the mangroves. The only time they'll kind of go near that is when they need some water to drink. They, maybe will go in there. But usually they don't mess with the water in there. The intercoastal is basically, the salt water, but they do have some areas with some fresh water that goes through, because they have kind of across from this mangrove man-made lake as well, and they will go over there to drink fresh water, but then they'll go up on the grassy area I just told you about. They'll eat the grass, and then wherever they go from that point on, I don't know. I started noticing eye shine, and they would, even though I would be shining the light literally right in the eyes of whatever this was, it was not leaving. It would stay there, and it would blink, and this was high up off the ground. Now, I can't say how tall whatever this was because I was, above it. So that's really hard to gauge how tall something is when you're looking down at it. I never got to see exactly what this was, but I definitely saw an outline, and the distance between the two eyes was decent size. So whatever it was had a relatively big head, and the footprints, even though I had no idea, again, what size the footprints or what this whatever creature was, it seemed like the footprints were relatively large. So it was hanging out down there for a while, and then when I would really start to shine the light, I had one of those new flashlights that are super, super bright LED. Well, it has a function on it where you can cause the light to strobe. And when I would do that, it would obviously find it kind of irritating because it would turn and it would leave for however long. But it kept coming back over a 4-day period. And, the fact, again, that my dogs, who would 9 out of 10 times, anytime there are animals, because where I live in Ohio, we have woods behind my house. Any kind of animal, it does not matter what it is, they will go right up to our fence in the backyard and they will growl, bark, challenge whatever's going through the woods. And they, as I said earlier, they wanted nothing to do with the balcony when the doors were open over this 4-day period. Now, when none of this was going on, before it started to occur and after this 4-day period when we left, so for 4 days straight, I was seeing this eye shine and signs something was down there. We left after that 4-day period where it was showing up. We left 2 days later, but during that 2 days, I did not see anything anymore. So, I never got to figure out what it was, but during that time, the dogs never wanted to be out there. But that last 2 days where whatever it wasn't out there, they were on the patio, they were on the balcony, and they did not care. They were out there, they were hanging out. So they were really freaked out by whatever was down there during that 4-day period, and I would have loved to have known what it was. I had mentioned to you yesterday what your thoughts were on skinwalkers. You hear a lot of stories about the Native Americans who, when they discuss skinwalkers, first and foremost, I always hear that don't talk about skinwalkers, because if you talk about them, you're going to draw attention to yourself And if there are skinwalkers around, or even if they are not in your immediate area, it will, in some way, shape, or form, give them the, ability to know that they're being talked about. And, some of the stories, again, are that they've come after people, they've hurt people, they've cursed people. You could find a number of different things that have been said just from talking about skinwalkers. So, looking back on my Dogman experience, like I said, when I was 15, I had said to my friend, I'm starting to wonder if it was a skinwalker. And, that the fact that the night after I spoke about this subject and mentioned skinwalkers specifically, that we started having activity outside our condo and right under our balcony the night after I started talking about it was really freaky. And, it really has put me in a state of thinking that possibly it was a skinwalker or skinwalkers, and they were drawn to me because I was talking about them. And it makes me wonder, I remember watching, I wish I had his name right now. He is a retired Navajo police officer, and there's a lot of shows on the Travel Channel where they'll discuss Skinwalker Ranch out, I think it's Idaho possibly, or Utah, and they just discuss a lot about it. Well, this one Navajo police officer has become pretty famous because he has been going around giving seminars with one of his police officers that he was a Navajo officer with, and they go around talking about what happened and during their 10 years there, of their experiences, and they give opinions on the skinwalkers and different kinds of cryptids that they either dealt with personally or know that fellow officers had dealt with. And they actually had put together, according to him, a kind of like a cryptid skinwalker SWAT team, basically, that would get orders to go out and deal with these things when they were, either killing livestock or hurting people. And I wish I could find out his name. I forget it, but he's a very very drawing person. He sucks you into hearing his personal stories. But he himself also talked about, if you talk about skinwalkers, you will invite them and their energy to latch on to you, and they will not necessarily come after you and hurt you, but he said there have been instances where people talked about skinwalkers and some of the different animals or creatures that they can turn into. And apparently people have been killed, they've been possessed, they've been put under, different kinds of control by them, or someone was killed and their likeness was taken over by the skinwalker. So I really recommend to anybody, that has had experiences with the Dogman to, possibly look into if you have any questions that they, might not have just been a Dogman. I would look into it, and I'm sure Vic can point you in the right direction for getting more information on them. So, when you're ready, Vic, I will be more than happy to elaborate on my experience when I was 15 years old, which led to, again, the story that I told while we were down there. And I feel like now, I had not brought up what I was just talking about. The Navajo officer had said that, and an elder, that they had went into a place, and an elder also talked about skinwalkers, and that they can be anybody. They could be, a judge. They could be a lawyer, a doctor. You don't know who they are. It could be, a relative of yours, and you would not know. Or they turn into just general animals like fox, or wolves, or whatever. And anybody that has looked into the story of the Skinwalker Ranch, again, I think that's in Utah. There are some really crazy, amazing stories that have gone about the Skinwalker Ranch. Man, and it really has put me in a strange place, because the experiences I had after I told my friend makes me think, did I, because I just mentioned skinwalkers, did I really bring something to the condo that was, studying me, or trying to make me go away or not ask about it? I don't know, but I have been very paranoid since that has occurred. And on our way home from Florida, we drove down there because we take our dogs, and we're not going to put our dogs in the belly of a plane and take a chance of them either getting hurt somehow. But we drive down there, and on our way back, I had some just experiences, be it if I was just paranoid. But I have always been someone who has said, trust your gut instincts. If your stomach is telling you that something doesn't feel right, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you should do this or that, listen to that little voice more times than not, because I have had many experiences over my lifetime where my gut instinct was correct. And I have been really freaked out, like I said, ever since talking about skinwalkers that evening. And even since we got home, like I said, we have woods behind my house. And, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like something is off. Like there have been nights that I feel like I've been watched. And we have, with the woods behind our house, my space, my man cave, is in the back of my house, which a huge big window I have right next to my chair. I look out at my woods, and like last night, I was very noited out. I felt like something was watching me from the woods. I did not see anything. I did not hear anything, but I just had that feeling of paranoia or dread. And it just makes me wonder if possibly something was going on.
It's only natural that an experience like that one would put you in a strange place. It really does make you wonder what it was that you saw that night. You weren't alone the night when you had that encounter when you were 15. What can you tell us about the people who were with you that night?
Yeah, I was with three friends of mine, very, very close friends of mine. My buddy Sean, my buddy Brian, and my buddy Mike or Ron. I apologize if I am getting older, so I'm forgetting. It was either Ron or Mike that was the last guy, but there were four of us. Geez, I wish I could remember right now who that was. But like I said, there were four of us. We all experienced the same thing. It wasn't like I got separated and I only saw this going on. All four of us saw it. All four of us experienced that. Sheer terror is the best way I can explain it. And, unfortunately, my best friend Sean is no longer with us. But my other two friends are still, thankfully alive. I had actually asked them if they would like to come on and discuss the story. And they, are they have professional jobs like the majority of us, and they are just concerned about discussing a subject like this because, as you and I have spoken about, unfortunately, you still are going to have those people in this day and age who, even though, we ourselves who had the experiences know that it really occurred, you're always going to get those that are going to say you're crazy or this person's crazy, and they talk behind your back or they spread rumors about you. And, it's frustrating, especially when something occurred and you have other witnesses who would, if really need be, would put their hand on a Bible or testify in court that this occurred. It's just a shame that we're still somewhere in the world that, if you talk about a subject like this, most of society frowns on subjects like that. And unfortunately, they lump people in categories together, and they, basically would say, that you're crazy if you believe that. Well, like I said, were three other people that were there that evening, and they all saw the same thing. I asked them if they would be willing to talk about this on the show, like I said, and they said, they're sorry, but they don't want to, possibly put their job in jeopardy by, talking about this. So I understand.
Oh, sure, yeah, it's totally understandable. If at any time they decide that they'd like to talk with me about that encounter because they think it would help them feel better, then yeah, please make sure they understand that I'm always here. But having said that, Matt, let's talk about that encounter now. Please give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, well, as I was starting to talk about, it was the summer. I was 15 years old, but in Youngstown, like a lot of other places in the United States, even though it's Northeast Ohio, we are less than an hour away from Lake Erie, one of the biggest lakes in the country. It gets extremely hot. We have had some horrific summers, and we get very, very hot summers with extreme humidity, which anybody that knows, say you have 98 degrees and then 100% humidity, or even 90 degrees with 100% humidity, it is absolutely miserable. So I will always remember how hot it was and how humid it was, and we were all sweaty. So that stuck out to me that night. Where we would go and where this occurred is if you go online and you Google Youngstown, Ohio, that's spelled Youngstown, and you go to Youngstown, Ohio Steel Mills. They are basically, although there is a company that still is making steel down there, for the most part, 75% of all of the industrial areas from the steel mills, they're just rusting away. They're falling apart. But we would, as young, adventurous, very wild young guys, we would go down to the steel mills, and it was, looking back now, there could have been some really bad things that could have gone on down there, not just from the experience we had, but just in terms of, who knows who we could have ran in down there. And during this time, this is when there was a lot of gang violence going on. The Bloods and the Crips was going on during that time. So many shootings. And we're young, and in our kind of bubble that, when you're young and you have your buddies, you guys all kind of just, the rest of the world doesn't really exist, and you guys just do your thing. Well, looking back as a parent, oh my God, if I found out my daughter was doing something like what we did, I would have a heart attack and never let her out of the house again. But if you Google Youngstown, Ohio Steel Mills, and go to images, you will get a great idea of what it looks like down there. And they have aerial views. So we would go down there. A buddy of mine actually another friend who wasn't there that evening lived right across the street from this big drive that the semi trucks filled with whatever kind of supplies would drive up and down out of the area there, and either take steel from there or bring supplies in there to make steel. Well, this drive was across a highway that would take you right down into the steel mill area. And we would go down there and we would stay there all day long. There's this one building. So you would go down the hill and you would come up to railroad tracks. Well, before the railroad tracks, there were these big, huge piles of dirt and supplies to make steel, like they call it coke. And it was just this stuff that they would mix or use to either heat. I'm not sure exactly what they did with it, but they would utilize it to make steel. And they had these gigantic piles of it, like small little hills, literal hills of them. And these hills were giant. I mean, some of them probably went up 30 feet in the air. And after you would you'd get up and go back down the other side over these hills. There were railroad tracks, and they were still in use. In fact, to this day, I believe they're still in use. You would cross these railroad tracks, and we had to be careful because the train would come through there, and on these trains they would have railroad security that not only protected the trains, they were also tasked if there's people down there that should not be down there, with either calling the police to take care of them, to get them out of there, or they themselves would shoo off whoever was down there. These guys were armed, and they just would cause unneeded problems for us if they would catch us. And for the most part, they never really did. So if we heard the train, we would take cover somewhere. So after you cross the railroad tracks, there's a number of buildings. This one building, we kind of made it our own personal headquarters, so to speak. And basically, there were wild dogs that lived down in that area and just that lower part of Youngstown, Ohio. And we picked this building because there were no stairs that you could walk up to get up to go into this building. I forget if they were just so deteriorated, that's why, or if they took them out or whatever. But we would have to jump up and kind of roll once we got up onto it to get up into the building. So if these wild dogs that live down there were, say, chasing us and were trying to get us, once we got up off the ground onto the opening area, they couldn't get up there. So, as I said, we made this kind of our headquarters, and on the inside, it was cavernous. It was huge. And what they had in there was, so they had all these, it is kind of crazy because they left so many different types of things there at these buildings. Now, maybe they were still storing them, maybe they were still utilizing them, and they just left them there, and they would come take whatever they needed if they ever needed it, or they just said, we don't need it anymore, and just let time take it. Well, imagine taking, say, for instance, a big oil drum and cutting it in half. So you have, kind of like a U shape. And there was a ton of these all over. They had rows of them. So what we did is, since there was at one end or the other of this big building, there was just big open walls. So you could look through. Once you got up onto the opening, you could look through the entire building out the other side and see, this all the way down. There was all kinds of other buildings down there. So what we did is we would go in there. We did go in there, and we took a ton of these pieces of metal, these kind of U-shaped, like I said, like a barrel cut in half, metal, very thick metal too. And what we did is we made rows of them going from one side of the opening to the other, and then we started stacking them on top of each other, kind of, so that we had a wall going side to side and up and down, and we helped each other. So what we would do is we would, three of us would stack these pieces of metal as high as we could get them, so that we had these makeshift walls that would most importantly hide us from these trains and these security guards that would ride on the outside of the trains. And, also at night, we would stay down there at night, as crazy as it seemed. And looking back, it was crazy what we were doing, but we just did not see, the stupidity of what we were doing. We just were young, tough teenage boys, and we just wanted to hang out down there. So we got pretty solid walls from side to side and up and down, and we sealed ourselves in at night. And what we would also do, since the inside of this building was so big, we would make big bonfires inside. And again, I apologize anybody listening about my sinuses right now. I sound terrible, but it's that time of the year. So we had endless supplies of wood pallets that we would be able to stack up, and we would light them on fire and would have great bonfires in there. And you want to talk about, it would turn night into day inside of these buildings. So getting to the evening that the experience happened, we had a really good fire going. And while we were in there and we were doing whatever we were doing, and let me also mention, it was between 4 to maybe 6 stories high. And they had this staircase that was a combination of both cement and metal. And that will come into play later. But it would light up all the way to the top. And each level had an entire floor. So you could go up one floor and you could walk around and then go up another one and another one. You could even get up to the point where you could be on the very top roof of the facility. And at the bottom, for maybe the first 6 or 7 steps, the stairs were basically destroyed. They were falling apart. And to get up those stairs, you had to walk on the outer part of it, which was the metal part of the stairs, where they obviously poured the concrete into that part of these structures so that, you had a stair. Well, they were all destroyed, as I just said, so we had to be really careful. And again, looking back, they were very dangerous. We could have fallen and gotten killed. Thankfully, nothing happened like that. So this evening that this occurred, we were in there, and all of a sudden we hear a group of these wild dogs, a pack of them. And there was a big pack of them. So what we did is we went, when we heard them, because they were right outside of the building we were in, we walked outside, we moved this makeshift door that we had made, and we went outside to see this pack of dogs. And I believe there was probably about 5 to 6 dogs that were in this group, and they were chasing something. We thought maybe it was, like a rabbit or a cat or something. We were trying to see what they were chasing. We did not see it. So what had occurred was, whatever they were chasing, they went up that hill of that coke material and down the other side. Well, as they went to the other side, the first thing we heard right after we lost sight of them was a couple of the dogs were barking, growling. It sounded like they were either fighting with each other, fighting with something else. But what occurred next was, you heard a few of the dogs yelp as if they were in pain, scared, something along those lines. And they really, let out some loud ones. And not long after that, Um, half of them came up over the hill and took off. The other ones remaining, one by one, we saw them. I remember two of them got literally launched into the air. One got thrown over the hill, hit the ground, rolled, and got up, and it was running away, but it was limping at the same time. And another one got thrown. We didn't see it, but we heard it hit the ground. It got up and it ran away. And then another one yelped, and it just came running over the hill and took off. They all were gone. I mean, you want to talk about gone? It was like a Lamborghini Diablo taking off. They were gone. All of a sudden, as we're watching them run away, wondering what they were seeing or fighting with, my one buddy says, "What is that?" Now, you have to understand, my friend Sean, God rest his soul, was a hilarious guy, but he was also like the Joker of the crew. And for better or for worse, he always was trying to pull one over everybody, so he would try and scare people, and he wasn't scaring us. We didn't get afraid, but he would always be the guy that would be like, "What's that?" or trying to freak girls out or whatever. And so immediately when he says, "What is that?" we right away said, "Man, shut up. It's us. We're not going to buy it." And he says, "No, really, you need to look. What is that?" And again, we're like, "Dude, just shut up. Quit it. We're not buying it. Let's go back inside." And then he really yelled, "What is that?" So we stopped, and I was the next one to look. And I looked, and lo and behold, at the top of this hill, of this material, on all fours, was the shadow of a extremely large dog, basically is what it looked like from where we were. It was maybe between 30 to 40 yards away. And, the light coming out of the building from the fire was super bright. And what we saw immediately was eye shine. And I noticed that right away, eye shine. And it was very pronounced, very bright. It was orangish red, with kind of a tinge of yellow. So it was in that, kind of fire kind of balance there, those three colors. And it was very bright, pronounced, like I just said. Then my other friends saw it. We were staring at it. We didn't run or do anything. We just were like, it looks like a dog. We're up off the ground. We're not really worried about it. There's things like bricks and rocks up there that we could throw at whatever it is if it tried to come up. And all of a sudden, and as I'm saying this right now, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. On my arms, I'm looking at goosebumps raising as I speak. I still can't believe what I saw that night. This dog, or more or less wolf-looking creature, whatever it was, and as of this moment, we still thought this was a dog. It looked like it was going to sit down. Well, in one motion, it did not sit down. It leaned back and stood up. And I am not kidding. It stood up on two legs. Its legs looked exactly like a dog, with that kind of what any dog's back legs look like. but it stood up on its hind legs and stood all the way up, and it stayed up. And I could not believe what I was seeing. My other friends could not believe what we were seeing. In fact, I remember this. My one buddy, Brian, started laughing because we all thought still it was a dog. And we were like, what's it doing? Doing a trick? I mean, what's going on? He started laughing because it looked like it was, just trying to stand on its back legs. But then as it stood up all the way, it was huge. It was tall. I'm not going to venture to say yet how tall I think it was, because in a little bit I will be able to explain why I think I had a better idea of said height. So it stood up, and my one bud Mike freaked out and ran back inside. Not long after that, my buddy Brian ran back inside, and then myself and my friend Sean at the same time followed them. And as we were going in, it had started running towards the building and running at an extremely fast pace. So we started to panic. And again, this was not running on all fours. It started to, it went back down to kind of on fours at first. It put its weight on its two front legs. It started taking a few strides, and then it was up again, running on its back legs, never going back down. We start panicking, going back inside, and we start trying to, as fast as we can, close off that door area that we had made. And we got a couple of them in the space, and then we started to pick one up to place it on top of them. So we wanted to make sure, whatever this was, if it came up, it would be blocked off so it couldn't just hop over the top of it, because they were probably about 3 feet high, 4 feet at the most. So as big as this thing looked, it could have hopped over one of them easy. Knowing what I know now, it could have hopped over 3 of them easy. So we start trying to get it up, and we're panicking, and they're screaming, get it up, get it up. And we hear, at the same time, we hear nails scratching to get up. And then all of a sudden we realize that it's up on the opening. And as we set that last wood, we only got 2 of them stacked on each other. We left it because we knew it was right behind it. And we started running and got up onto those stairs, and we ran up to the 2nd floor. Once we got up to the 2nd floor, which wasn't easy, if you recall, I had talked about the stairs were destroyed, and the only way up was kind of walking up the outside part of these stairs on the metal. So we went up to the stairs and immediately turned right. When we turned right, there was a concrete kind of barrier, half wall, so you could turn around and look directly down at that 1st floor. As soon as we got up there, we hear super loud boom, bang. Well, either because we did a terrible job at stacking that second one, or this creature pushed the top one and the bottom at the same time, causing the top one to fall and the second one to move enough from the one on top. Since it fell, it pushed the other one kind of out of the way too. Again, we are panicking. We're terrified. We don't know what's going on, but we're staying quiet. It all of a sudden, and I'll never forget this, it was like something out of a horror movie. We notice from the light from the fire, once this thing starts coming in, you could see its shadow against the far wall being displayed as it walks into the middle of that space where the fire was. We started to get a good look at it. And what it was basically the description that I grew up being from the movies I saw. It looked like a werewolf, basically, for all intents and purposes. And again, we are looking at each other. Our eyes, I'll always remember the sheer terror in two of my buddies' eyes. Their eyes were just as big as saucers. I was on the verge of a breakdown. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My friend Mike dropped down, so he was hidden out. Once he did that, we did that as well and dropped down, but we were still low enough that we could still see what it was doing. And it was looking around the room. It almost immediately looked right up at us and saw us and started to walk towards the middle of the room to the farther point around the fire where it would be able to be almost directly under us, looking up at us. And one of the things that will always stick out in my mind, I will never forget it as long as I live, is it started baring its teeth, which were huge, very large canines, and they were very big, very white. The two large canines on top went out to the sides a little bit. So they went straight down, not straight, but they went down, but at an angle outwards. And then the bottom bigger canine fangs, or whatever you want to call them, more came up more straight. It was salivating. Now, be it either it does this on a regular basis, or it was hungry, or it was displaying some form of intimidation, but it was salivating so much. There was so much just saliva dripping from its mouth that I'll always remember. I could hear over the fire, over my own heart beating in my head so loud it sounded like drums, that you could hear the slobber hitting the ground. You could hear it hitting the concrete. And I will always remember that to the day I die. And I remember when I talked to my buddy Sean about, we really went into discussion. My other two friends did not like to talk about it. They don't really, even when I talked to them recently about it, did not really want to get into it. But again, my friend Sean, who has passed away, him and I, we talked about it in depth. We were not afraid to do it. That was one thing that we always said to each other will stick with us. Its eyes were reflecting the eye shine from the fire, from the bright light from the fire. Again, the fiery colors of orange, red, yellow. And so what occurred next was It looks to its left, and you could see it saw the stairs. Well, as it more quickly walks towards the stairs, you have to understand the inside of this building had these 4 giant pillars made out of concrete. And obviously, they were the support structures, main support structures for this building. And they were huge. I'm sure they were, the circumference of them was at least 10 to 15 feet around. And then height wise, it went from floor to ceiling. But I will always remember once it got to the point where it was at the bottom of the stairs, looking at how tall it was. Again, we were looking down, so I can't be exact. I have no ability to know for sure, but I guarantee you it had to be a minimum of between 7 to I would say 10 or 11 feet, maybe 12. But the fact, again, 15 years old, that many years ago, terror going through every part of my body, and looking down at something, it's just so. It was big regardless. Another thing that will always stand out to me was the width of its shoulders, the muscular arms, its forearms, its legs. You could even see behind the fur on its chest, in its stomach area, that it was, it was ripped. This thing was built and not exactly, but if you've ever seen the movie Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, he turns into a lichen or a werewolf in that movie, and he was buff as that werewolf in that movie. It reminds me very similar of how that looked. Not exact, but similar. The color, it was mostly solid, but I can't tell you for sure if it was black or dark brown. It looked black, but I'll always remember it also had white running underneath it on its chest area, under its chin. I think its tail might have had, I can't remember for sure. I think its tail might have had white at the tip. And if I remember right, it had color either blanking out a little here, but it was either brownish or, again, more of a lighter color, maybe tan or white, on its lower paws, more towards just the smaller part of the foot, and the hands, it had some lighter colors there. It started to go up the staircase, and it was so fixated on us that as it started to go up the stairs, it either didn't pay attention or didn't care, but it missed getting footing on this situation of the broken staircase and putting its footing on the outside of those stairs so it could stand on the metal. And once it started to try to get up there, we thought for sure it was going to get up. And I'm going to tell you what, if it did get up, and it did not, if it did get up, I am horrified to think what would have occurred, because it could have killed all 4 of us easily. We could not have protected ourselves from this thing. It was so massive. It was so big. I don't recall A lot of people, I've heard stories of them saying they remember the claws on these dogmen. I don't remember that. So I did, as I said earlier, I heard the claws in the claws on its feet when it climbed up on the outside of the building when it came in. I would assume they were big, but I don't recall exactly how big they were or even noticing them. It was looking up at us, and as it started to climb up again after it slipped, it fell, and it fell forward. And this is how I also knew that it was extremely tall, because when it fell forward, its two hind legs were on the floor on the bottom at the bottom of the staircase. And when it fell forward after missing the stair, it put its front legs down on the first step that was still together. And like I said, there was a few of those first stairs, like 6 or 7, maybe, if I remember right, that were broken. And we could not have had our feet on the bottom at the bottom of the stairs and put our hands up on that first stair that was able to be stepped on. We could not have done that. So it was extremely tall. It had a long tail. So just as it was trying to get up that last time and catch itself and getting its feet under it, we heard a train in the distance. Whenever they would come through that area down there, they would blow the horn on the train, and it would come through, and it was very loud. Well, be it divine intervention, just good timing, whatever, it was perfect timing for the train. And when it got in front of the building, it turned around and ran out of the building. I do remember this too, and the first time you and I spoke, I did not remember this to tell you. As it was leaving, right before the last time we saw it, it turned and looked over its right shoulder up at us, and then it just ran out. It did stop, but it did turn around and look at us. It ran out, and we heard the train. They had to see the light down there emanating from that fire. They had to. They never stopped, and no one ever came down. We actually wish that they did. We wanted somebody to come. We were hoping that they saw it and they were going to send security, or some security was going to get off the train, that they were going to stop the train to come see what was going on. Or like I said, that they would send police down there. We prayed that somebody was coming. Now, back in 1989, during this time, we did not have cell phones. So we had no ability to contact anyone. And we had about a half an hour that we did not move from that spot up on that second floor. And all we did was stand there and stare. And when we could not hear the train anymore, we were horrified, because we thought for sure this thing was going to come walking back into the room, and it was going to come up there and it was going to kill us. We were in there for about a half hour, 45 minutes, and that's when we finally decided we have to get out of here, because it was still relatively early in the night and we had to get out. So we decided, let's do it. Let's go. We did have flashlights. Again, back then we did not have they didn't have LED flashlights, so it's not like they have those new kind of super bright flashlights. These were just regular old, plastic flashlights, and I mean they were semi bright, but not great. And we turn them on and we leave. And I'm going to tell you what, that was equally as horrifying as it was when it was inside of the building with us, because we could not tell where it was. We didn't know if it was behind us, in front of us, if it was waiting for us over the next hill. When we went over the hill, was it going to come up from behind us and get us? That fear of just leaving that area to get out of there and get to safety was it scarred me for years, and I'm nervous now thinking about it. So we get over that one, we cross the railroad tracks, then we have the hill of that material they used in the steel mill, and then we had to walk again more space, and you had to go up this huge hill of gravel, like gravel and dirt and all that. And then once you got up above that, there was the road that led you out to the highway, to cross the highway to get to my buddy's house. When we were crawling, and you had to literally get on your hands and knees to crawl up this last huge hill of gravel and dirt and whatever else was on that. I mean, there was everything there, wheels from cars, tires, all kinds of stuff. But we're crawling up on our hands and knees, and all four of us kept turning around. There would be a point when one of us would start to slide back down because we would lose our footing, because we're trying to walk up on gravel and dirt, and we would lose our footing, and then one of us would start to freak out, and the rest of us would watch to make sure it wasn't coming up from behind us. And we had to a couple times form a human chain to pull us, one at a time up the hill. And it took us probably another 25 to 40 minutes to get, once we crossed those railroad tracks, it took us between 25 to 40 minutes to get, after we crossed the railroad track, to go over that hill of coke to up the big hill. Like I said, that was horrible. We finally got to the top of the gravel hill. We were so exhausted, we could not run, so we had to walk. We were soaking wet with sweat, dehydrated, basically in tears. We were so horrified. And I didn't mention this to you either. Once we got across the highway and got to my buddy's house, who lived down there, who was not with us, his name's Clint. He also, unfortunately, God rest his soul, is not with us anymore. Him and his family were not home. So we couldn't go there and have him let us in. And so we just, got water from the hose, and we ended up getting on our bikes, which we had left at his house, and we went home from there, which was another, we lived far from that area. So it was probably another half an hour to 45 minutes of bike riding. And it was up big hills, because it was at the bottom of a road That's a real famous road in Youngstown, Ohio, called Briar Hill, Brier. And it's a real famous road in Youngstown. And one of the things it's known for is being extremely steep and high. And it's not easy to get up Briar Hill on some bikes, let me tell you. So when we finally got back to my buddy Sean's house, we were exhausted. We were horrified. I remember once we got there, we talked about it, what we saw and what we thought it was. And, it was basically to the point once we started talking about it, my buddy Brian and my other friend Mike had basically shut down. Me and my friend Sean were the only ones talking about it. They had called their parents to come get them. I ended up spending the night at my buddy Sean's house, but we were messed up. We were really horrified. And even at night, even though we were far, from downtown, even though, it would take long for this thing to find, if it knew where we were, it would take it long to get there. We felt we were far enough away that we weren't going to hopefully see it, but we were still all night long paranoid, scared that it was going to maybe show up, or, we even heard, I remember it got to the point later that night when we were watching TV at his house. It started getting real windy, and he had this wood tree right outside his window that the wood branch would always hit the window when it was real windy, and we kept thinking this thing was out there, and it wasn't. But I'm going to tell you what, Vic. That was a harrowing experience that really happened. And I'll never forget when we woke up, I asked my buddy, the first thing I said to him is, did that really happen last night? And he said right to me, I was just going to ask you the same thing. And then we called our other two buddies and asked them, how they were, and they were freaked out. And, we actually, after that, had never gone down there again. And that, like I said, that was like one of our main spots. We loved to go down there. We spent years going down there, but after that happened, that was it. We stopped going down there. I remember years later, my buddy Sean and I had, driven near the area, but we did not go back. I have a number of friends that are police officers. I've thought about telling them and asking them if they would go down with me. So I didn't want to hurt this thing or try to kill it or anything. I just wanted to go back down and see if we could find it and at least just see it. But I never asked it, and I got into that mindset of, they're going to think I'm crazy, especially, even though they're great friends of mine to this day, they're police officers. Now, and I've heard this many times, that there are a lot of police officers or military that know all about Bigfoot and Dogman and other cryptids and, aliens and such. But, I'm sure you also have those that they just can't open their mind and they've never seen anything like that and had it happen or had it close to them. Where someone they knew had an experience, or, so the majority of anybody that has ever mentioned things like that to most police officers, I'm sure they get scoffed at or asked if they're on drugs or drunk or crazy or, we just didn't want that. So that is my story about what occurred when I was 15 years old with this Dogman experience, and it has stuck with me through the years.
Well, when you have such a terrifying experience as that one, it's going to stick with you through the years. You deserve a lot of credit to have an experience like that and go on to live such a productive life. Yeah, that couldn't have been easy. I'll tell you what, Matt, since you're so under the weather right now and myself, I'm just getting over something, let's reconvene this next week if you don't mind. I've got a bunch of questions I'd like to ask you. Does that sound good? Would you be able to come back next week?
Yeah, sure. And then I'll obviously have, I won't be stuffed up.
Well, like I told you, I just hope you feel better soon. Having said that, thanks again so much. Have a great night. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.